Hey there Dev Squad, Manuel here. In this video I want to show you how to fix the weight map that you get from a Mixamo rig. Mixamo is a great website for having your characters rigged. However, sometimes the weight mapping that this website gives us may have some issues when you have characters with very particular geometry. So I'm going to show you what the problem is in this one. So if I were to move his head, you can see that this is deforming as well, and that's part of some weight mapping issues because the Mixamo rigging tool is an automated process, and its algorithm it's already calculated for a certain kind of meshes. So if you have a more custom character like we have here, you may run into some problems, and I'm going to show you how to fix those in this video. But first, for those who are not familiar with the concept of weight mapping, I'm going to explain that right now. Okay, let's talk about some basic concepts. When you have 3D objects in any program, this is what we call a mesh. So the reason why we call it a mesh is because if you use the wireframe mode on any 3D objects, they usually look like this. So this is what will be a mesh, and a mesh is comprised by a couple of things. One is the polygon, which are every single one of these in the middle, and what creates those polygons are the vertices. So the vertices will be each one of these points that's surrounding the polygon. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's just a triangle, but these vertices are pretty much what we want to control whenever we are going to be animating a mesh. So in order to animate a mesh, we could be pulling all the vertices, but that would be a huge headache. So the first thing that we usually do, specifically when animating characters, is using bones. So let me draw a bone here. They usually look like this. If you are in programs like Maya, they're called joints, and the part in between will look like this. So the bone, what it does is this will allow us to move or deform the vertices. Now, what we call weight mapping is the influence that this bone has on the vertice. So let's say that I want to deform these 4 vertices right here, but I don't want to touch anything else. Then I would assign a certain amount of influence to these vertices and 0 influence to these vertices on the outside. So let's say that weight equals influence. So what I'm doing by assigning a type of weight is I'm telling the mesh this bone is going to have this amount of influence on these vertices, and if the bone has 1, so it's usually done in from 0 to 100%. If bone has 100% influence or 100% of the weight, all these vertices are going to move along with this bone. If I choose a value in between 0 and 100, so let's say 25 or 30, let's say we want to add 25 or 30 to these right here, then these will move along with the bone, but they will not go all the way. There'll be like a smoothing process in between, and this will make more sense once we're in the 3D program. I just wanted to show you the very basic concept of what weight mapping is. It's pretty much the amount of influence that we assign from the bone or the joint into the vertices of a mesh. Alright, here in my 3D program, I already have a mesh that I uploaded to Mixamo and I rigged it. If you want to know how to do that, there's already a tutorial on how to rig your mesh in Mixamo. A link will be in the description below. And for this one, I'm going to use one of the characters for Emberbane, a game that we've been developing here at Vertus as well. So if you want to check out the development, there'll be a link in the description for that too. Alright, so we already saw the problem that we have here, and the reason why that problem is going on is because this spike is very close to the head. So Mixamo just grabbed a little bit of the spike while assigning the influence of the bones, and that's one of the things that we need to correct. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll go into wireframe mode just so I can see my bones. And here in 3D Studio Max, you're gonna see that there's something here called skin. This will be the modifier that assigns the weight and the values to the vertices, from the bones into the vertices. Maya also has a skin, although it's not looked at a modifier, but you'll also see that there's our skin features. So for this to work, what we need to do is we need to click on edit envelopes, but let's just replicate that error that I showed you before. So like this means that we don't want the bone from the head to have any influence on this spike. Now let me click on my mesh, edit envelopes, and when I click on edit envelopes, which is pretty much editing the weights, what you'll see is a heat map. So red means a lot of influence, and when it gets to blue, that means very little influence to almost none. The colors in between will be orange and yellow. So right now, as you can see, I'm on the head bone, and you're seeing that there's yellow on my spike. This means that the head bone is actually influencing the spike, and that's why it's causing that deformation. All right, so what I need to do is I need to make sure that this bone has absolutely no influence into this spike right here. So I'm going to go into wireframe again, and if you're in 3D Studio Max, you can select vertices, and now we can just select our vertices right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the vertices from the spike, and by the way, in order to do this, you need to make sure that you are on a specific bone. So I'm going to go into the head bone right here, click on the head bone, and I'm going to select all those vertices. And if you scroll down here, you're going to find that there's a wrench next to weight table. Click on the wrench, and there's going to be a weight tool. So there are various ways to assign the influences into the vertices. One way is to just use numbers. So if I select those vertices, so let's say I select all the vertices around here, and I click on 0, that will take away all the influence from that spike. Now if I were to go over here, I still have some influence, and this is actually red, so that means there's a lot of influence from this bone into the spike, which we don't want. What I'll do is then select all my spike, and I can actually, another way to do this is, if you don't want to click on the numbers here, you can do it progressively by using the plus and minus sign. So I'm going to use the minus sign here on the set weight part. So this is if you want to reduce it gradually. So in this case, we wanted to take it all out, but sometimes you want to reduce things gradually to make smoother transitions, and this will be a nice way to do it. So let me show you another tip on how I treat these meshes whenever I'm doing some fixes for weight mapping. The other way that I would do this is I will need to get out of that modifier. I will go back into wireframe mode so I can see my bones, and I will activate auto key. Auto key is any move that I do here in 3D Studio Max will be saved, and that will be saved as part of an animation. So let's say we select this one right here. Let's select this shoulder bone right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the time slider all the way to 5. And I'm going to move the shoulder. I'm actually going to rotate it this way, so I can correct the deformation. Now this one is actually pretty well done. There's not much to fix right here. Let me go back into shaded mode. And one of the reasons why I do this is so I can keep on shaded mode without having to go and grab the bone and move it again and back and forth. That can be a little bit of a hassle. So a good way to do things is if you can just create a very small animation. So you can scrub this way, and this will allow you to see the deformation on your mesh and make sure that everything is looking fine. So right now, this actually Mixamo did a very good job of with this shoulder right here. And the good part of this is that if I wanted to go into my bone again, I can just delete this keyframe and I have no animation. So let's check out this part of the shoulder, because since I have the most spikes on this part, is what's going to be producing the most problems. So if you want to do a little bit more complex movement, what I'll do is, and by the way, you don't have to do 5 frames, you can do 10 frames, 15 frames, this is totally up to you. That's just a number that I like to use. So I will rotate my shoulder this way, and actually from what the looks of it, it's actually doing a very good job. There's just a minor fix that we can do here. Then what I'll do is I'll move it all the way to 10 just to do a secondary movement. So let's say I'm going to do it this way so we can check for more errors. And again, this is actually looking very nice. I think Mixamo did a very good job in the shoulder part. And let's say we wanted to do check for another bone. So let's say we wanted to check for the clavicle bone. So I go all the way here, and actually one thing that I like to do is if I'm going for more complex motion than just rotating the arm, I like to add a little bit more frames to it. So what I'll do is I'll hold shift and drag this frame to clone it. And then what I'll do is move it to 15, and I'll move that clavicle bone this way. And as you can see, I'm doing an exaggeration. Usually you don't move your bones this much. But the point is, I want to show you that there is a bad weight mapping over here, because look at how our spike, these spikes in this particular character are supposed to be bone, are supposed to be completely solid, and this is deforming as it was non-solid. So this is something that has to be corrected. And now that I have set up my bones, I can go back into my mesh and I can start fixing that weight mapping. So I go back into edit envelopes, and as we can see, there's still a little bit of influence over here. So make sure that we have absolutely no influence. Let's go with 0. And we may have to assign some influence from other bones, because that's one thing about doing weight mapping is your vertices always have to be assigned somewhere. So as you can see, if I assign this to 0, right now this neck bone is zeroed out over there, but if I were to go into this bone, then a little bit of influence is assigned, and it's going to be this never-ending game. So that means that you need to assign your vertices to something. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to assign this part kind of to, let's say, like a yellow, to almost the same as this clavicle bone right here. So let's move it out, and I'm going to grow my selection. I'm going to add a little bit of weight like that. All right. So now if we were to select the head, you can see there's no influence. There's a little bit of influence from here. I'm actually going to put this to 0. And now you can see that there is 0 influence. So your vertices always have to be assigned to something. Otherwise, again, it's going to be this back and forth like you saw me doing over here. And now that I've assigned it to the clavicle bone, now I don't have any problems. All right, so let's do the motion here. Let's see how this looks. It's actually looking okay. What I don't like is this part over here. So again, one of the excellent things about doing it with the timeline is I can just move my timeline, my slider a little bit. I can select the vertices that I want to affect. So it'll be this vertices around here, and I'm not going to use loop because I don't want the whole loop being influenced, just these vertices. I'm going to move it all the way here, and I can just add a little bit. All right, and that looks a lot better, so it doesn't look like the mesh is going inside. Okay, let's go to another motion. All right, so far is looking good because this is a bulb that it's part of his arm, so it's not supposed to move that much. But let's fix the other problem that was caused by the arm actually going across. So if I go all the way to 15, you're gonna see that this bends a lot. So let's make sure that we fix that. All right, so right now we can grab these, and actually we can make these all the way to 1, or maybe 75. And make sure you always have all your vertices, because as you can see there's something that's not good here, so I'm just going to do everything, and I'm just going to click loop and make sure that I'm grabbing all those. So I'm going to do 75, and that way, because this part is organic, I want it to be around here. Maybe a little bit less. There you go. So that fixed our problem. As you can see, it's much different from the problem that we had in the beginning. And again, this is a good way to just check your weight mapping from the Mixamo. And the other good thing about this is once you're done, you can just return everything to 0. Get out of the envelope, go into wireframe, and just click on the bone that you were using. So let's go into the shoulder. I'm going to delete these keyframes. I'm going to go into the clavicle. I'm going to also delete these keyframes. Make sure that we have no more animation. And let's say that we have finished doing this rig. All you have to do is make sure you grab everything. And this is what you're going to export out as an FBX. Now, when you export it out as an FBX, you're going to then upload it into Mixamo, and it's going to work as well as the new rig that you downloaded. Okay, now what I'm showing you is the previous rig that Mixamo gave us. So this is just a plain rig that I would get just right after uploading my mesh. And as you can see, there's a lot of deformation on this particular spike right here. Look how it deforms, and it kind of looks very flat whenever he actually looks back that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the character that we just fixed, and you're going to see the difference. So all we have to do is click on upload character, and I'm going to grab my new rig and drop it here. It's going to upload, it's going to process. This actually doesn't take that long. Alright, and even now it's showing us the animation, the same animation that I had over there about the character looking around. And as you can see, just take a look at that spike. It's not flatting anymore. It's actually looking very nice. So I click on next, and this is something that you should be warned about. Your character will be replaced. So I just click on next, and look at him. There is no more bending or flattening of that spike. If you already have animations set up from Mixamo, you'll just have to throw in the rig back into Unreal Engine and everything will work as before. The only difference is that your character will look much better and more accurate to the vision that you have for it. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. Stay creative, and I'll see you in the next video.